English and you want to get an amazing score on the IELTS exam, then watch until the end of this video. My name is Michael Anton. I'm the founder of English at the Ready, and today I have something extra special for you. Firstly, we're going to take an in-depth look at the format of the exam, so you know exactly what you need to study and what to expect on the test. I'm also going to talk to you about the two different types of IELTS exams, the academic and the general tests. And by the end of the video, you're going to know exactly which test you need to take. And lastly, we're going to look at a whole bunch of different sample questions for all sections of the exam, so you know exactly what's waiting for you when you take the IELTS. I know this video is going to be extremely helpful for you, so make sure to stay till the end. You don't want to miss this. Let's get into the lesson and talk about the IELTS. Everything you need to know about this exam. Now, first of all, what is the IELTS? So if you're watching this, you probably already have a general idea of what the IELTS is, but for those of you who aren't familiar with the test, the IELTS stands for the International English Language Testing System, and it's a standardized test designed to assess the English language proficiency of non-native English speakers. Now, this isn't completely true. Okay, the IELTS can also be used to test native speakers, but mostly it's used for non-native speakers. It's used for study, for work, and immigration purposes. And really, it's just like any other test. You shouldn't be scared of it. You shouldn't fear it. It's a test, and just like with any other standardized test, practice and familiarity with the test format will help you prepare effectively. The IELTS has 4 sections: the listening section, the reading section, and the writing and the speaking sections. Pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. The listening section tests your ability to understand spoken English, to understand what native speakers or what people speaking English are actually saying. The reading section tests your reading comprehension skills. So you'll look at a passage, at a text, and you'll be asked some questions. The writing section asks you to write something, and the speaking section is a face-to-face interview. So you're going to sit down with the examiner, and they're going to ask you some questions to test your spoken English skills. Now, when it comes to the listening section, you're going to get 4 recorded monologues and conversations. So a conversation is 2 or more people. A monologue is just one person speaking. You're going to hear each recording only once, only one time, and you'll answer questions based on what you hear. There are several types of example questions. We have multiple choice questions. They're going to ask you what the main purpose of the conversation is. You have matching questions, where you have to match the speaker with the appropriate opinion. So if there's more than one speaker, you have to match the opinion of one speaker with A, B, or C in the question. And lastly, sentence completion. You're going to complete a sentence with a word or short phrase. We'll look at this in a bit more detail very shortly. Let's talk about the reading section. So the reading section includes 3 passages with increasing difficulty levels. A passage is maybe a paragraph, several paragraphs. It's a text. And again, you'll have several types of questions. You'll have multiple choice questions where you have different answers. You have to select the best answer. You'll have true, false, or not given questions, where you're going to have to say if the statement is true, if it's false, or if it's not given. If it's not given, that means that there's not enough information in the text for you to determine. So you don't know if it's true or false. It's not given in the text. And lastly, matching headings. So a heading is the title, okay? And you'll have to match each heading with a paragraph. Pretty straightforward. Again, we'll look at some examples of reading questions very shortly. Let's talk about writing. Now, there are two writing tasks, and task 1 is different depending on which IELTS test you take. I'm going to talk about this at the end, but there are two different types of IELTS tests. We have the academic test and we have the general test. And you're going to learn a bit more at the end of this video, so stay till the end. I'm going to tell you all about the difference between these two tests and which one you should actually take. But basically, in the writing section on both tests, you have two tasks. For the academic test, you're going to see a graph, a table, a chart, or a diagram, and you're going to need to describe the information in your own words. For task 1 on the general test, you'll be given a situation. It's normally a very practical situation, one that you might find in everyday life, and you'll be asked to write a letter requesting information or maybe explaining the situation. And in task 2, you're going to be asked to write an essay in response to a point of view, argument, or problem. So your opinion on something. It's a bit more personal. Now, how long should your essay be? For task 1, you need to write at least 150 words. But the perfect length of this essay is anywhere around 170 or 190 words. Now, for task 2, you're going to have to write at least 250 words. And the perfect length might be, 270, 275, 80, or 290 words. So around that range is ideal. Now, there's technically no upper limit, but try to keep your essay just slightly above the lower limit. So above 150 for task 1 and above 250 for task 2. Now let's talk about the speaking section. This is the section of the IELTS that scares most students. They're worried about this interview. Now, first of all, I will say the interviewer is not there to trip you up or to make you fail. They're just there to have a conversation with you and to assess how well you can speak English and how well you can answer the questions. So don't worry, they're not there to trick you. They're just there to test your ability, and you can think of it like a conversation. That's going to help you when you approach this question or this section in the IELTS. If you think about it like a conversation, you're going to be less nervous. Imagine you're having a conversation with your friend or with your family. Now, there are 3 parts to the speaking section. In part 1, it's all about familiar topics. So, family, hobbies, and studies. It's more like an interview. But for part 2, which is known as the long-term question, you'll actually be given a card with a topic, and there's going to be a specific question on that card. You'll have 1 minute to prepare, and then you'll speak for about 1 to 2 minutes. So you actually have some preparation. And lastly, in part 3, you have a discussion. And this discussion is related to the topic in part 2, but it goes into more detail. It's more abstract. The questions are a bit more complicated, but it is still related to the topic in question, or rather in part 2. Now, let's talk about the difference between the general and the academic tests. Lots of students have questions about which you should take, and I want to answer some of the most common concerns that I hear all the time. Now, the academic and the general tests are very similar, but they're somewhat different versions of the IELTS. And which one you choose depends actually on your reason for taking the IELTS. So I'm going to show you some common reasons for taking the IELTS, and I'm also going to tell you, based on those reasons, whether you should take the academic or the general test. But here's the thing. If you don't know which to take, always ask. There's nothing wrong with sending an email or giving them a call, depending where you're applying to or why you need the IELTS in the first place, and asking, hey, look, do you prefer the academic test or the general test? So when in doubt, ask. Now, there are some common situations where you might take the academic test or you might take the general test. If you're applying to university or another academic institution, you're probably going to have to take the academic test. And this is commonly required when you apply for an undergraduate, which is a bachelor's degree, or a postgraduate program, which is a master's or a PhD. And immigration authorities, or maybe employers, might require the IELTS general test. For example, visa applications, immigration, or if you're applying for a job abroad or at a foreign company where you need English, they're probably going to ask you for the general IELTS. Now, as I mentioned, the speaking and the listening sections of the two versions are very similar. The biggest differences are actually found in the reading and the writing sections. Now, when it comes to the reading section, on the academic test, you're going to find the texts are based on books, on journals, on magazines, or maybe newspapers too. Now, these are topics that are still relevant to everyone's life, but they are more commonly found in academic contexts. So the kinds of things you might find if you're at school or if you're studying at university, think of those kinds of texts, those kinds of passages. Books, journals, magazines, and newspapers. Now, the general test focuses more on practical texts. So notices, advertisements, company handbooks or guidebooks or manuals, and guidelines, so rules. Things you will probably encounter if you go to an English-speaking country and you live your life there, even if you're not at a university. So more general topics, more practical topics. Now, when it comes to the writing section, remember we have two questions. We have task 1 and we have task 2. For task 1, you're going to have to describe visual information. So graphs, charts, diagrams, that sort of thing. And in task 2, you're going to have to write an essay on a general academic topic. So something you might find at school. For the general test, again, we have two questions. Task 1 involves writing a letter based on a given situation. And task 2 requires writing an essay on a more general topic related to everyday life. Again, they're very practical in nature. The situation might be something you would encounter if you were living in an English-speaking country. And the general topic, again, would be relevant to most people's lives. So there are some differences in the reading and writing sections. Before we continue the lesson, just a quick reminder to leave a like and comment below if you're finding this lesson useful. And of course, if you want lessons on all things English, make sure to subscribe to English at the Ready here on YouTube so you don't miss anything. And if you want to know how you can improve your English this year, just check out the link below in the video description. We've looked at the overview of the test. We've talked about the differences between the general and the academic tests. Now I want to actually look at some sample questions with you. Let's start with the listening section. Now, I'm not going to play the audio track for you today. We don't have time for that. I just want to give you an idea of the kinds of questions you might expect. Now, remember, for the listening section, we have different types of questions. The first type is the multiple choice question. You will hear a conversation between two people and answer a question based on what you hear. For example, what is the woman's main reason for calling? A, to make a reservation. B, to inquire about the hotel's facilities. C, to ask for directions. So just by reading this question, you can probably tell the audio is a woman calling a hotel. And you basically have to interpret it, listen to it, and choose the best answer. Now, with multiple choice questions, you have to be careful because there will be two questions that look very similar, but only one is correct. It might trick you, but look for the best one. Be very detailed. Think about why this might be better, why the other could be wrong. Just know that there will often be two answers that look correct, but only one is actually correct. Now we're going to look at an example of a matching question. Matching questions are questions where you'll hear a series of statements or descriptions, and you'll have to match them to the appropriate speaker or category. For example, look at this question. Match the leisure activities mentioned to the appropriate days. Swimming, hiking, sightseeing. Those are the three activities. You have to listen to the audio and determine whether they're swimming on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, hiking on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or sightseeing on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. So you're matching the activity with the day. It's a matching question. The third type of question you'll find on the listening section is the form completion question. You'll hear a recording where someone provides information, and you'll have to complete a form or table with the missing details. For example, complete the registration form with the following information. So you'll hear a recording of somebody speaking, and you might have to put in the name, the address, the phone number, the email, whatever it is, but you're listening to the recording and you're completing the form based on what you hear. You'll also find sentence completion questions. These are questions where you'll hear a sentence or a phrase with a missing word or words, and you'll have to complete it based on the information you hear. For example, complete the sentence with the missing word. The weather forecast predicts blank over the weekend. You'll have to listen to the recording and you'll have to find out what the weather forecast is predicting. Maybe it's rain, maybe it's sun, maybe it's snow. Whatever it is, you have to fill in the blank. You have to complete this sentence. Now, the next type of question you'll find is the map or plan labeling question. You'll hear a description of a map, a plan, or of a diagram, and you'll have to label the features according to the directions you hear. For example, you might have a map, and the question might ask you to label the following locations on the map: the train station, the library, or the park. You'll be given directions, you'll listen to the directions, and you'll have to label where those three places are on the map. And lastly, the sixth type of sample question you might find on the listening section is the true, false, or not given questions. You're going to hear a series of statements, and you'll have to determine if they're true, false, or not given according to the information you hear. For example, the question will ask you, are the following statements true, false, or not given according to the speaker? And the statement might be something like, the new shopping mall will open next month. So you'll listen to the audio, you'll read the question, and you have to answer whether it's true or false that the new shopping mall will open next month. Now, if you listen and you can't find that information in the audio, it's not given. So it's not given in the audio. There's not enough information to know whether it's true or false, so you would mark not given. Now, when it comes to the writing section, again, we have two tasks. For task 1, the academic and the general training tests are slightly different. An example of an academic essay might be to describe the changes in the proportion of households with access to the internet from 2000 to 2020. Now, you're not expected to know this statistical information off by heart. You will have that information there, probably in the form of a graph or a diagram or some sort of chart, and you'll have to write an essay based on that information. For the general test, you might need to write a letter to the manager of a local sports center requesting information about membership options. And lastly, task 2 is more personal. So it's asking your opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. You might be asked something like, some people believe that social media has a negative impact on society. Do you agree or disagree? Again, no right answer, no wrong answer. You can agree, you can disagree, but you have to say why. That's the important part. You always have to explain the reasons why you believe that. Now, when it comes to speaking practice, very straightforward. An example of a part 1 question might be to describe your hometown. So something that is relevant to you, that you know well, that's very familiar. A part 2 question might be, describe a memorable journey you have taken. A journey is a long trip. A memorable journey is something you can remember, a trip that you can remember for good reasons or for bad reasons. Now, part 3 is the discussion. And remember, it's more detailed. It's related to part 2. So a good follow-up for that might be discuss the importance of traveling in today's society. So you'll talk to the interviewer about travel. For part 1, you might be asked something like, what do you like to do in your free time? For part 2, discuss a historic place you have visited and its importance. So you're talking about your experiences. And in part 3, you're being a bit more philosophical. What role do you think education plays in shaping a person's identity? Now, when it comes to reading, I'm going to show you a text you might find. I'm going to read it for you. Again, the questions are similar to the ones you'd find in the listening section. So, multiple choice, true, false, form completion, all that kind of stuff, but you're going to have to read. Now, let me read this text to you. The importance of sleep. In today's fast-paced world, sleep is often overlooked or sacrificed in favor of productivity and entertainment. However, sleep plays a crucial role in maintaining overall health and well-being. Adequate sleep is essential for physical, mental, and emotional functioning. During sleep, the body undergoes vital processes that aid in growth, repair, and rejuvenation. Muscles are repaired, tissues are regenerated, and the immune system is strengthened. Lack of sleep can impair these processes, leading to increased susceptibility to illness and slower recovery times. Moreover, sleep is closely linked to cognitive functions such as memory, concentration, and problem solving. Adequate sleep improves learning ability and enhances memory, consolidation, allowing individuals to retain information more effectively. In contrast, sleep deprivation can result in impaired cognitive performance, reduced attention span, and difficulty in making decisions. Furthermore, sleep plays a significant role in regulating mood and emotional well-being. Chronic sleep deprivation has been associated with increased irritability, mood swings, and heightened stress levels. Adequate sleep, on the other hand, promotes emotional stability and resilience, enabling individuals to cope better with life's challenges. In conclusion, sleep is not merely a luxury, but a fundamental necessity for good health and functioning. Prioritizing adequate sleep is essential for maintaining physical health, cognitive function, and emotional well-being in today's demanding world. I don't expect you to understand every word in that passage. That was an advanced text, and the point is not to understand everything. The point is to have a good understanding of the general ideas expressed in that text. Not every single individual word. For example, in question 2, how does sleep deprivation affect cognitive functions? You don't actually need to know what sleep deprivation or cognitive functions are to answer this question. I'll tell you, but you don't need to know. So sleep deprivation is when you don't have enough sleep. You're deprived of sleep. Cognitive functions refers to your brain and your ability to think. But again, you don't need to know the definition of these two terms. If you go back into the text, you can easily find these two words, sleep deprivation, and you can infer based on the sentence what's actually happening. So chronic sleep deprivation has been associated with increased irritability, mood swings, and heightened stress levels. Or if you go up, sleep deprivation can result in impaired cognitive performance, reduced attention span, and difficulty in making decisions. So that's an even better answer because you have both terms in one sentence. So again, you don't need to know the meaning of every single word. You just need to be able to look at the text and infer the meaning based on the surrounding context. Now, again, these are some common reading questions you might find with this kind of passage. You can pause the video, you can study the text, you can study the questions, and of course, feel free to watch this as many times as you want. If you've made it this far to the end of the video, congratulations, because that tells me you're serious about improving your English and getting an amazing score on the IELTS. Today we talked about the format of the test. I gave you several examples of questions on the listening, reading, writing, and speaking sections, so you know exactly what to expect. And I also talked to you about the difference between the academic and general tests. If you found this lesson useful, make sure to leave a like and comment below. Make sure to subscribe to English at the Ready here on YouTube so you don't miss any future lessons. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're serious about improving your English this year, make sure to go check out the link in the video description to learn more about how we can help you reach your goals. That's it for now, and I'll see you in the next